The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold representatives from over 1,000 different worlds. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that displayed the spinning stars of the galaxy itself. Today was supposed to be simple, just another ceremony where a new species would join the Council and become part of the greater galactic community. Ambassador Thalver adjusted his ceremonial robes and checked his notes one more time. The humans had been discovered only 5 standard years ago. Their ships were primitive but functional. Their technology was crude but showed promise. They seemed friendly enough during the first contact. Everything pointed to this being a routine admission. The human delegation entered through the main doors. They walked with confidence that seemed unusual for such a young species. Most newcomers showed at least some nervousness when facing the combined might of 1,400 civilized worlds. These humans looked almost relaxed. Their leader was a man named Kim Ji-won. He was young by most species standards, perhaps only 30 cycles in his species' lifespan. He wore a simple, dark suit that contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other delegates. His team followed behind him, 5 more humans who looked around the chamber with undisguised curiosity rather than fear. High Chancellor Vexamer activated the ceremonial protocols. His voice echoed through the chamber as he began the standard questions. Name of the species, name of their homeworld, population, technology level. All routine information that would be entered into the galactic records. G1 answered each question clearly and without hesitation. Everything seemed perfectly normal until Vexamer asked the final ceremonial question. It was a formality, really, just asking the delegate to state their world's true name in their oldest language. Ji-won smiled when he heard the question. It was not a nervous smile or an excited one. It was the kind of smile someone makes when they know something others don't, when they're about to reveal a secret that will change everything. Our planet is called Earth in our common language, Ji-won said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. But our oldest records, the ones written into our very genes and deepest memories, give it a different designation, a name that predates our civilization by millions of years. The chamber grew quiet. Something in the human's tone suggested this was more than simple historical trivia. The ancient name translates to your languages as Deathworld 7. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Counselor Ilanth, an elderly female from a species that had spent 10,000 years mapping and cataloging the galaxy, made a choking sound. Her skin changed from its normal blue to a sickly gray color. Her hands trembled as she activated her personal data tablet and began searching through files that most council members had never even heard of. No, she whispered, but in the sudden silence her voice carried. The breeding worlds were destroyed. The architects sealed them all? This cannot be real. Ji-won's smile remained steady. Destroyed? No, Counselor. We prefer to think of it as graduation. We passed the test. Now the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates from dozens of species began shouting questions. Some activated their own data tablets, searching for information about Deathworlds and architects. Others simply stared at the humans with expressions that ranged from shock to horror to disbelief. Hi. Chancellor Vexamer raised his hand for silence. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When the chamber finally quieted, Vexamer's expression showed deep concern. These are serious claims, he said carefully. The architect Deathworlds are legend. Most scholars believe they never truly existed. They are stories used to frighten children, cautionary tales about the dangers of genetic manipulation. Park Min-ho, one of the human scientists, stepped forward. He was carrying a small crystal device that glowed with soft blue light. With respect, Chancellor, they were very real, and we can prove it. Before anyone could object or grant permission, Min-ho inserted the crystal into the chamber's central data system. The ancient computers accepted the device immediately, recognizing protocols that had not been used in millions of years. The holographic displays throughout the chamber activated. They showed images and documents that most of the assembled delegates had never seen. files written in languages so old that the translation matrices struggled to interpret them. But the images were clear enough. 12 planets, each one marked with detailed specifications. Environmental parameters. Genetic manipulation protocols. Expected extinction rates. Survival benchmarks. The documents described something that seemed impossible. A deliberate attempt to create the most hostile environments possible, then seed them with life and see what evolved. The architects, whoever they had been, had wanted to create the ultimate survivor species. They had designed worlds where everything was engineered to kill, where the environment itself was the enemy, where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable could survive. Falver felt his blood run cold as he read the specifications for Deathworld 7. The planet had experienced multiple mass extinction events. Its atmosphere had been toxic at various points in its history. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages that covered the entire surface, and life that evolved to be as deadly as the environment itself. "You're saying Earth is one of these worlds," Falver said slowly. "That your species evolved in these conditions." "Not just evolved," Lee Subin, another human scientist, said with disturbing cheerfulness. "We thrived. Every challenge made us stronger. Every extinction event left behind survivors who were better adapted. Our world tried to kill us in every way possible, and we just kept getting better at staying alive." Troy Dayan, a human biologist, brought up another display. "Let me show you some examples. Earth has weather patterns that can generate winds over 300 kilometers per hour. We have geological activity that can release enough energy to devastate entire continents. Our oceans contain organisms that produce toxins capable of killing millions of individuals." "And you survived all this?" Counselor Archin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We did more than survive," Jawan replied. "We domesticated the predators. We learned to predict the weather patterns. We built cities in the most hostile zones and made them thrive. Because that is what we were designed to do. That is the purpose of a death world, to create life that can survive anything." Vexamer accessed the files that Ilanth had pulled up earlier. They were from something called the Forbiddance Archives, sealed records that required the highest level of clearance to even view. What he read there made his hands shake. 12 death worlds. 6 of them had produced species that became too dangerous even for the architects. They had been neutralized, destroyed along with their entire solar systems to prevent them from spreading. 4 more had failed completely, producing only mindless predators with no capacity for civilization. Those worlds had been quarantined, sealed away from the rest of the galaxy that left 2 worlds unaccounted for. And now one of them was standing in the council chamber, asking to join the galactic community. "Where is Deathworld 12? Vexamer asked quietly. "Still quarantined," Jawan answered. "The species there evolved into something that cannot coexist with other life. They are pure predators, beautiful in their own way, but incompatible with civilization. They must remain isolated. But you are different. We are. Because our world taught us something the architects did not anticipate. It taught us that survival is not enough. We learned to cooperate, to build, to create beauty in a world of death. We looked at our deadly planet and decided not just to survive it, but to protect it. To preserve even the things that could kill us because they had as much right to exist as we did." Hanjisu, the final member of the human delegation, spoke for the first time. "We know what we are. We know we're different from you. We evolved in hell and learned to call it home. But we also learned compassion. We learned that the strongest survive by helping others survive. And now we want to share that with the galaxy." The chamber remained silent as the delegates processed this information. Humanity was not just another young species stumbling into the galactic community. They were the product of the most advanced genetic engineering project ever attempted. They were designed from the beginning to be survivors, to adapt to anything, to overcome any obstacle, and they had succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. "Hi." Chancellor Vexamer looked at the human delegation with new eyes. Fear and respect mixing in equal measure. We will need time to discuss this. The council must deliberate on what your revelation means. Guan nodded calmly. We understand. Take all the time you need. We have been waiting for millions of years. A few more days will not matter. As the humans were escorted from the chamber, Thalver noticed something that disturbed him deeply. They were not nervous about the council's decision. They were not worried about being rejected or feared. They walked out with the same quiet confidence they had entered with because they knew something the rest of the galaxy was just beginning to understand. Humanity was not asking for permission to join the galactic community. They were simply informing everyone that they had arrived, and nothing in the universe would stop them from taking their place among the stars. The emergency session began immediately after the humans left the chamber. High Chancellor Veximer had sealed all communications. Nothing discussed here could leave until they reached a decision. What they were dealing with could cause panic across every civilized world in the galaxy. Counselor Ilanth stood at the central display, her skin still showing that sickly gray color. She had spent the last hour diving deeper into the Forbidden's archives, pulling up documents that had not been accessed in millions of years. What she found made everything worse. The architects were not mythical beings, she began, her voice shaking slightly. They were real. They existed approximately 8 million years ago. They were the most technologically advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known. They could manipulate genetics at the molecular level. They could reshape entire planets. They could engineer life itself. She brought up an image of what the architects might have looked like. The reconstruction was based on ruins found on dead worlds scattered across the galaxy. They had been tall, with 4 arms and crystalline structures growing from their bodies, but it was their eyes that stood out. Dozens of them, covering their heads, allowing them to see in every direction at once. They created the Deathworld Project because they were afraid, Ilanth continued. The galaxy was changing. New threats were emerging from beyond the known regions. The architects realized that despite all their technology, they were soft. They had lived in comfort for so long that they had forgotten how to truly survive. Thalver studied the documents carefully. So they decided to create species that would never forget. Species that would be forged in constant struggle. Exactly. They took 12 planets and engineered them to be hostile in every possible way. Then they seeded each world with basic life and waited. The environmental conditions were designed to force rapid evolution. Only the most adaptable organisms would survive each extinction event. Over millions of years, this would theoretically produce species capable of surviving anything. Counselor Plex, representing the powerful Draxan Empire, activated another display. I have been reviewing Earth's geological and biological data. The conditions described in these reports should have been impossible for complex life. The display showed Earth's history in fast motion. The planet started as a ball of molten rock. Then came the first oceans, but the atmosphere was toxic. Volcanic eruptions happened constantly. Asteroid impacts that would have sterilized most worlds. Ice ages that covered the entire planet in frozen wasteland. Yet life survived every single catastrophe, Plex continued. Each time the planet nearly died, something survived. And those survivors evolved into new forms better adapted to whatever came next. The extinction events themselves became selection pressures. Lisa Bin's earlier words echoed in Thalver's mind. Every challenge made us stronger. Every extinction event left behind survivors who were better adapted. Counselor RH brought up biological data on human beings themselves. Look at their physical specifications. They can survive in temperature ranges that would kill most species. Their bodies have redundant systems for critical functions. Their immune systems are incredibly complex, capable of adapting to new threats in real time. That immune system concerns me the most, said Counselor Shara, whose aquatic species came from one of the gentlest worlds in the galaxy. According to these scans, humans are constantly fighting off microscopic invaders. Their bodies are battlegrounds. They carry bacteria and viruses that would be deadly to us, but they coexist with them. Troy Dayan had explained this during the initial presentation. Humans maintained entire ecosystems of microorganisms in their bodies. Some were helpful. Some were potentially harmful but kept in check by the immune system. Humans were never truly alone. They were walking colonies, individual organisms that were also communities of millions of smaller life forms. Their stress response is equally disturbing, Plex added. When threatened, their bodies flood with chemicals that temporarily increase strength, speed, and pain tolerance. They essentially become more dangerous when injured or afraid. Thalber had heard of this. The humans called it adrenaline. It was like a built-in combat drug that activated automatically during danger. Combined with their other adaptations, it made humans incredibly difficult to kill. "We need to discuss what happened to the other death worlds," Veximer said grimly. "Because that will inform our decision about humanity." Ilinth pulled up the relevant files. Death Worlds 1 through 6 all successfully produced sentient species. But those species evolved in one direction only. They became perfect predators, perfect killers. They had no capacity for cooperation or culture. When they developed space travel, they immediately began trying to consume everything they encountered. The display showed images from the old war. It had happened 6 million years ago, long before most current species had even evolved. The architects had been forced to destroy their own creations. Entire solar systems had been collapsed into black holes to contain the threat. Death Worlds 8 through 12 failed completely, Ilinth continued. The environmental pressures were too extreme. Life evolved but never became complex enough for sentience. Just endless cycles of predator and prey, becoming more and more specialized until they reached evolutionary dead ends. "And Death World 7? Veximer asked. "Unknown. The files show that it was monitored for approximately 4 million years. Then the architects disappeared and the monitoring stations went silent. Most scholars assumed Death World 7 had failed like the others or produced another species that had to be destroyed. But it didn't fail, Thalver said quietly. It produced humanity? And humanity is different from what the other Death Worlds created." Hanjisu's words came back to him. "We learned that the strongest survive by helping others survive." Counselor Arachin brought up human history files. "I have been studying their development. Yes, they have a long history of warfare, but they also have an equally long history of cooperation. They formed tribes and cities. They created art and music. They built civilizations that valued more than just survival. The displays showed human achievements. Architecture that combined beauty with function. Music that stirred emotions. Stories and art that explored the nature of existence itself. These were not the products of mindless predators. They also show remarkable restraint given their capabilities," Plex admitted grudgingly. "They developed nuclear weapons over a century ago. They could have destroyed themselves many times over, but they chose not to. They created treaties and rules to prevent total annihilation." Shara was not convinced. Or perhaps they simply recognized that destroying themselves served no purpose. That is basic survival instinct, not true compassion. "Look at how they treat their own world," R.H. encountered. "They could have eliminated all the dangerous species on Earth, made it safe. But instead they created preserves and protection laws. They study and catalog even the organisms that kill them regularly. They recognize the value of life beyond their own species." This was true. Humans maintained zoos and wildlife reserves. They had laws protecting endangered species. They had even brought several animals back from the brink of extinction through careful conservation efforts. They were predators who chose to protect their prey. "We must consider the practical implications," Veximer said. "If we accept humanity into the Council, we are accepting a species designed to survive anywhere and adapt to any threat. A species whose entire evolutionary history was spent overcoming impossible odds. They could be incredibly valuable allies," Plex said thoughtfully. "We have colonies on marginal worlds that struggle constantly. Environmental disasters that devastate our populations. Humans could teach us survival techniques we never learned because we never needed them. Or they could be an existential threat, Shara argued. What happens when they decide they want resources we control? What happens when their survival instincts conflict with our interests? We cannot fight them in any environment they find hostile. That is their natural habitat. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for immediate acceptance. Others wanted to reject humanity entirely. Still others suggested quarantine, treating Earth like Death World 12, and sealing it away from the galaxy. Through it all, Thalver kept thinking about Jiwan's expression when he revealed Earth's true nature. That smile. Not threatening but knowing, like someone revealing a secret they had been keeping, not out of deception but simply because no one had asked the right question. There is one thing we are all forgetting, Thalver finally said during a brief pause in the arguments. The humans came to us. They did not need to reveal their nature. They could have joined the council under false pretenses. We would never have known about the Death World project if they had not chosen to tell us. This brought silence to the chamber. They were honest about what they are, Thalver continued. They showed us the truth even though they must have known it would cause fear and uncertainty. That suggests a level of integrity we should not dismiss. Or supreme confidence, Shara muttered. They know we cannot stop them, so why bother hiding? Perhaps, Thalver acknowledged. But consider their proposal. They are not asking for territory or resources or military power. They want to establish response teams to help other species facing environmental crises. They want to share their knowledge of survival and adaptation. Veximer looked at the data one more time. Humanity was offering to turn their greatest strength into a service for the entire galaxy. They wanted to be the ones who rushed into disaster zones while everyone else evacuated. They wanted to teach soft species how to survive on hard worlds. We need more information, the Chancellor decided. We need to see humanity's capabilities firsthand, not just read about them in files and reports. I propose a practical demonstration. Plex's expression showed interest. What kind of demonstration? A test. We place the human delegation in a controlled but hostile environment and observe how they respond. If they truly are what they claim, they will survive easily. If they are exaggerating their capabilities, we will discover that as well. It was Counselor Shara who suggested the specific location. Testing Ground Sigma. We use it for Draxan military training. It is a Class 7 hostile environment. If humans are truly from a death world, they should find it manageable. The vote was taken. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be tested, and the entire council would watch to see if the legends of the death worlds were truly real. The human delegation was resting in their assigned quarters when Counselor Plex arrived with an armed escort. Jiwan looked up from the report he was reading, showing no surprise at the sudden visit. His team remained calm as Draxan soldiers positioned themselves around the room. This is highly irregular, Jiwan said mildly, setting down his tablet. Is there a problem, Counselor? Plex studied the humans carefully. They showed no fear despite being surrounded by armed guards, no tension in their body language, just calm assessment of the situation, like predators deciding whether a threat was real or just posturing. The Council has reached a decision, Plex announced. Your claims about being from an architect death world are extraordinary. Before we can proceed with your admission, we require proof of your capabilities. Hanjisu frowned. What kind of proof? We provided historical records, genetic data, and environmental specifications for Earth. What more do you need? A practical demonstration? Plex replied. You will be transported to Testing Ground Sigma. It is a Class 7 hostile environment that we use for military training. You will survive there for one standard cycle. No equipment. No technology, just yourselves and the environment. Li Subin pulled up information about Testing Ground Sigma on his personal device. His eyebrows raised slightly as he read. Class 7, that means significant predator presence, limited fresh water, temperature extremes, and toxic plant life in some regions. Correct, Plex confirmed. Most species cannot survive even a few hours there without extensive equipment. Draxan soldiers train for months before attempting the survival course, and even then they carry basic supplies. Troy Dean looked at the environmental data with interest rather than concern. The atmospheric composition is similar to Earth, slightly higher oxygen content actually. And the gravity is only about 90% of what we're used to. This should be manageable. Park Min-ho was already analyzing the biological samples in the database. Carbon-based life forms with protein structures. We can digest? Good. The predators hunt in packs based on these behavioral notes, probably coordinated ambush tactics. We'll need to establish a defensible position quickly. Plex watched this exchange with growing confusion. The humans were not protesting or showing fear. They were analyzing the challenge like students preparing for an exam. Already discussing strategies and solutions. You accept these terms? Plex asked. G1 looked at his team. Each of them nodded. We accept, but we have one condition. This test will be recorded and broadcast live to the Council. We want everyone to see exactly what humans can do. No edited footage. No selective reporting, full transparency. This actually suited Plex's purposes. He wanted the entire Council to witness this. Agreed. You will be transported in 6 hours. Prepare yourselves. After Plex left, the humans gathered to discuss their approach. To any observer, they might have seemed worried. But Thalver, who had attached himself to the observation team, noticed something else. The humans were excited. They were looking forward to this. It's been too long since we did anything like this, Lee Subin said with a grin. Remember the survival training we did in Alaska? That was brutal, Park Min-ho admitted. 3 weeks in the wilderness with nothing but a knife. But this sounds easier actually. Better climate. Edible plant life, and we have a whole team instead of going solo. Troy Dean was making notes. We should establish shelter first. Then water source, then food. The predators will mostly hunt at dawn and dusk based on the data. We can use the middle of the day to scout and gather resources. Han Jisoo pointed out potential problems. The test is only one cycle, about 26 hours in our time. That's barely enough time to settle in properly. We'll need to work fast. Then we work fast, Jiwan said simply. This is what we do. This is what humans have always done. We adapt, we overcome, we survive. 6 hours later, a transport ship carried the humans to Testing Ground Sigma. The planet was located in a remote system far from any inhabited worlds. It had been chosen specifically because its environment was hostile enough to challenge even the toughest species. The ship descended through thick clouds into a landscape of dense jungle and rocky terrain. The temperature was already climbing toward 40 degrees. Humidity hung in the air like a physical weight. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, calls from creatures the humans had never encountered before. The pilot, a nervous centauri named Kale, kept checking his instruments. I still think this is madness. No one survives out there without equipment. Even with the emergency extraction team standing by, this is incredibly dangerous. We'll be fine, Lee Subin assured him cheerfully. This is actually pretty nice compared to some places on Earth. The humans were dropped in a small clearing surrounded by thick vegetation. As soon as they exited the ship, it lifted off quickly, as if afraid to linger in this hostile place too long. The humans were left alone with nothing but the clothes they wore. Across the galaxy, thousands of delegates gathered in viewing chambers to watch the live feed. Olbatomus tracked the humans from above while smaller drones followed them at ground level. Every moment would be recorded and analyzed. G1 looked around the clearing, taking in their surroundings with a practiced eye. Okay team, let's show them what humans can do. Min-ho, check the plant life for edible species. Subin, find us water. Dayan, scout the perimeter and identify threats. Jisoo, start gathering materials for shelter. They split up immediately, each person moving with purpose and confidence. The watching delegates leaned forward in their seats, fascinated by the humans' immediate action. No panic, no hesitation. Just smooth execution of a plan they seemed to have prepared in advance. Park Min-ho examined local plants carefully. He crushed leaves to smell them, checked the underside of petals, and even tasted tiny samples of several species. Within 20 minutes, he had identified 3 edible plants and 2 that could be processed to remove toxins. Lee Subing followed the slope of the land downward. Reading the terrain like a book, she found damp soil that indicated underground water. Using a sharp rock, she began digging. Within an hour, she had created a small well that slowly filled with clean water. Choi Daeun moved through the jungle like a ghost, making almost no sound despite the thick undergrowth. She found tracks from the local predators and studied them carefully. She noted the spacing between paw prints, the depth of the impressions, and the direction of travel. She returned with detailed information about what they would face. Han Jisoo gathered dead wood, dry leaves, and fibrous plants. She selected rocks with specific properties, looking for ones that would create sparks when struck together. By the time the others returned, she had assembled everything needed to create fire and basic tools. The council watched in amazement as the humans worked together with practiced efficiency. There was no arguing about who should do what, no confusion about priorities. They moved like a single organism, each part knowing exactly what role it needed to fill. How are they doing this? Counselor R.H. asked in wonder. They have never been to this planet before. They have never seen these plants or animals. Yet they are adapting instantly. Thalver studied the feeds carefully, watched their body language. They are reading the environment. Every rustle of leaves tells them something. Every smell provides information. They are not just adapting to this world. They are understanding it. By midday, the humans had established a basic camp. They had fire, which was important not just for warmth but for keeping predators away. They had a shelter made from branches and large leaves, positioned with its back to a rock formation to prevent attacks from behind. They had water and several types of edible plants, but what impressed the watching delegates most was how the humans seemed to enjoy themselves. They were not grimly struggling for survival. They were almost relaxed, chatting while they worked, occasionally laughing at some private joke. This is recreational for them, Ilan said in disbelief. Look at their vital signs. Their stress hormones are actually lower now than they were in the council chamber. They find this environment relaxing. It was true. The humans were more comfortable in this hostile jungle than they had been in the civilized council. This was their natural habitat. Not the soft corridors of space stations or the controlled environments of cities, but the wild places where survival depended on skill and knowledge. As evening approached, Choi Daeun spotted movement in the trees. The predators were coming. She signaled the others without speaking, just a quick gesture that they all understood immediately. The creatures that emerged from the jungle were impressive. They stood about 1.5 meters tall with powerful legs and sharp claws. Their heads featured rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. They moved in a coordinated pack of 6, spreading out to surround the human camp. The council delegates tensed, expecting violence. These predators had killed several Draxan soldiers during previous training exercises. They were dangerous, efficient killers, but the humans did not panic. Jiwon grabbed a burning branch from the fire and stepped forward confidently. Park Min-ho flanked him with another firebrand. The other humans spread out, making themselves look larger and more threatening. Jiwon shouted at the predators, a loud, aggressive sound that echoed through the jungle. He waved the fire in threatening arcs. The predators hesitated, confused by prey that fought back so aggressively. Then something unexpected happened. The humans charged. Not away from the predators, but toward them. They moved as a coordinated unit, using fire and loud noises to drive the creatures back. The predators, faced with prey that acted like predators themselves, made a tactical decision. They retreated into the jungle, deciding these strange creatures were not worth the fight. The council chamber erupted in shocked conversation. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had asserted dominance. They had claimed this territory as their own. They are apex predators, Plex said with a mixture of respect and fear. On their world, they must be at the top of the food chain. Not quite, Thalver corrected, remembering the files on Earth. Actually, humans are somewhere in the middle of Earth's food chain. There are many creatures on their world that can kill them easily. But humans are unique because they are predators who hunt other predators. As night fell, the humans maintained a watch rotation. They kept the fire burning bright, knowing it would discourage most nocturnal hunters. They talked quietly among themselves, sharing observations about the local ecosystem, and across the galaxy, the council delegates watched and realized something profound. Humanity was not just another species that had survived difficult conditions. They were the product of the most ambitious biological engineering project ever attempted. They were proof that the architect's dream had been possible, Deathworld 7 had succeeded, and its children were ready to take their place among the stars. The second morning on, testing ground Sigma began with the humans in excellent condition. They had slept in shifts through the night, maintaining constant watch. Their shelter had held against a brief rainstorm. Their fire had kept burning. They had accomplished in one night what took most species days of struggle. Li Subin was boiling water over the fire using a container she had woven from local plant fibers. The weaving technique was something humans had been doing for thousands of years. Simple but effective. The hot water would kill any harmful organisms before they drank it. Park. Minho was roasting some kind of root vegetable he had found. He had tested it carefully first, trying a tiny amount and waiting to see if his body reacted badly. When nothing happened, he had dug up more. Now, they had a reliable food source to supplement the edible plants from yesterday. Choi Daeon was sharpening a stick into a spear using rocks to scrape away the wood. It was a primitive weapon, but effective. Humans had been making spears for hundreds of thousands of years. The knowledge was almost instinctive at this point. Han Jisu was working on improving their shelter, adding more layers of leaves to make it waterproof. She moved methodically, testing each addition to ensure it would hold. The structure was beginning to look almost comfortable. Jiwan sat near the fire, watching the jungle and thinking. The test was going well? Too well, perhaps. They had proven they could survive here, but he wondered if the council truly understood what that meant. In the council observation chamber, the delegates were having similar thoughts. What they were witnessing was both impressive and deeply unsettling. The humans had adapted to an alien environment in less than one day. They had established dominance over the local predators. They were not just surviving, but thriving. Their efficiency is remarkable, Counselor Archin admitted. Every action serves multiple purposes. When they built their fire, they chose a location that provided warmth, light, and protection. When they gathered food, they also noted which plants could be used for medicine or tools. They waste nothing. Plex nodded slowly. This is how apex predators think. Every resource is evaluated for maximum benefit. Every action considers both immediate needs and future requirements. Thalver was watching Jiwan specifically. The human leader seemed relaxed, but Thalver noticed his eyes never stopped moving, constantly scanning the environment, always aware of his team's positions. Alert for any changes or threats? It was the mindset of someone who had learned to expect danger anywhere at any time. Request permission to speak, a new voice said. A junior analyst named Kesh had been reviewing historical data. I found something in Earth's records that might be relevant. Veximer gestured for him to continue. Humans have a recreational activity they call camping, Kesh explained. They voluntarily go into wilderness areas and live without modern technology for periods of time. They do this for enjoyment. Teaching their young these skills is considered important for their development. The chamber fell silent as this information sank in. They practice survival for fun, Ilanth said slowly. They deliberately put themselves in situations that simulate hardship because they enjoy the challenge. Not all humans do this, Kesh clarified. But it is common enough that they have entire industries built around providing equipment for such activities. They even have competitive events where humans test their survival skills against each other. Shara shook her head in disbelief. Most species try to distance themselves from hardship. We build cities and technology to escape the difficulties of nature. Humans embrace it. They seek it out. Because it is in their genes, Thalver said quietly. Remember, Earth spent millions of years forcing them to adapt or die. That kind of pressure does not disappear in a few thousand years of civilization. The instincts remain. The skills remain. Humans are only a few generations removed from the wilderness. For them, this is not a test. It is a reminder of who they are. On Testing Ground Sigma, something unexpected was happening. The long-range weather monitoring systems had detected an approaching storm. Not a normal storm, but a cyclonic event that occurred only once. Every few decades on this planet, the wind speeds would exceed 200 kilometers per hour. Lightning strikes would be constant. Flash flooding would transform the landscape. Even the automated monitoring stations had to be recalled to orbit during these storms. Plex immediately contacted the extraction team. Prepare for emergency retrieval. Get those humans off the planet now. But when they attempted to contact Jiwan, he refused extraction. We appreciate the concern, Jiwan said calmly through the communication device, but we will be fine. We have dealt with similar conditions on Earth many times. This is not open for debate, Plex insisted. Even Draxan soldiers evacuate for these storms. They are lethal to anyone caught in them. Then consider this an extension of our test, Yuan replied. You wanted to see what humans can do. Let us show you. Before Plex could argue further, the humans disconnected the communication link. They needed to prepare and did not have time for lengthy debates. The team moved with urgent efficiency. They reinforced their shelter with additional supports, digging posts deep into the ground and bracing them with heavy rocks. They dug drainage channels around the structure to divert water away. They secured everything loose that might become a projectile in high winds. Choi. Dan used mud and plant fibers to seal gaps in the shelter walls. The mixture would dry hard and provide additional strength. Hanjisu gathered extra firewood and stored it inside where it would stay dry. Lisubin filled every container they had made with water. Knowing they might not be able to gather more during the storm. Park Minho created a secondary shelter inside the first one. A smaller reinforced area where they could retreat if the outer structure failed. It was basic emergency engineering, the kind of redundant planning that had kept humans alive through countless disasters. The council watched in fascination as the humans worked. They moved with speed but not panic. Each person knew exactly what to do without being told. It was like watching a machine with human-shaped parts, each component working in perfect synchronization with the others. They are preparing for war, Plex observed. That is military efficiency. Military planning. No, Thalver corrected. This is survival efficiency. This is what a species does when they have faced disasters so many times that the response becomes automatic. They do not need orders or detailed plans. They just know. The storm hit 3 hours later. The wind arrived first, bending trees and tearing away loose vegetation. Then came the rain, sheets of water so thick that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Lightning split the sky in continuous flashes, illuminating a landscape being transformed by raw natural fury. The council delegates watched in tense silence as the human shelter was battered by wind and water. Several times it seemed the structure would collapse, but the humans had built well. The reinforcements held. The drainage channels diverted the flooding away. The mud seals prevented leaks. Inside their shelter, the humans waited calmly. They kept their fire burning using the dry wood they had stored. They ate the food they had prepared. They even took turns resting, knowing they would need their energy after the storm passed. Their heart rates are barely elevated, the medical officer reported. They show no signs of panic or extreme stress. They are treating this as normal. Because for them it is normal, Ilanth said quietly. Earth has hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes, events that can devastate entire regions. Humans have been surviving storms like this since before they had technology. This is just another disaster to overcome. The storm lasted 8 hours. When it finally passed, the landscape of Testing Ground Sigma had changed dramatically. Trees were down everywhere. The small streams had become raging rivers. Entire sections of jungle had been flattened by wind and water. The extraction team prepared to descend, certain they would find Badas. No one could have survived that storm without proper shelter and equipment. But when their sensors focused on the human camp, they detected movement. The shelter had held, damaged but intact. And the humans were emerging, already assessing the new situation and planning their next actions. Li Subin was checking the water collection systems they had set up. The storm had filled them beyond capacity. "Well, we don't need to worry about water anymore," she said with a laugh. Park Minho was surveying the fallen trees. "Lots of good wood here now. And look, some of those roots that got exposed. Those are the ones I wanted to try eating but couldn't dig up. Storm did the work for us." Choi Dayan was tracking how local wildlife had responded to the storm. The predators had retreated to caves and wouldn't emerge for several hours. That gave the humans time to repair and improve their camp without worry about attacks. Han Jisoo was already reinforcing the parts of their shelter that had taken damage. She was incorporating lessons learned from the storm, making the structure even stronger than before. Ji-won stood in the clearing and looked up at the cloudy sky where he knew the orbital cameras were watching. He smiled and gave a small wave as if to say, "See? We told you we would be fine." In the council chamber, no one spoke for a long moment. They had just watched humans survive, something that would have killed soldiers from the most militarily advanced species in the galaxy. And the humans had not just survived. They had remained calm throughout. Had even used the disaster to their advantage, gaining access to resources they could not have reached before. "Request the extraction team to retrieve them," Veximer finally said. "They have proven their point. They have proven it beyond any possible doubt." When the transport ship arrived, the humans packed up their few possessions and prepared to leave. They extinguished their fire carefully, making sure it would not spread. They even arranged some of the recovered food in a pile where local animals could find it. Giving back to the ecosystem even as they departed. As they lifted off, Ji-won looked down at Testing Ground Sigma one last time. It had been a pleasant challenge, a reminder of what humans were capable of when they embraced their true nature. He hoped the Council had learned what they needed to learn because humanity was ready to join the galactic community, but on their own terms, as equals who brought unique and valuable skills, as survivors who could teach others how to face the impossible and emerge stronger. The galaxy was about to change, and nothing would ever be the same again. The return journey to the council chambers was quiet. The humans rested, recovering their energy after the intense experience. But across the communication networks, every species in the galaxy was watching the recorded footage and talking about what it meant. Death World 7 was real. The architect's greatest success was about to take its place among the stars. And everyone would have to adjust to this new reality, whether they were ready or not. The council chamber was filled beyond capacity when the final session began. Word of the human survival test had spread across the galaxy. Representatives from species that rarely attended council meetings had arrived to witness this historic decision. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of fear. All came because they understood this moment would shape the future. High Chancellor Veximer called the chamber to order. It took several minutes for the crowd to settle. The tension in the air was almost physical, a weight pressing down on everyone present. "We have completed our evaluation of humanity," Veximer began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "We have reviewed their history, analyzed their biology, and tested their capabilities. Now we must decide what that evaluation means for the Galactic Council and all civilized species." He paused, letting the significance of the moment sink in. "Before we proceed, I invite Councillor Plex to present his findings. As the one who proposed and supervised the test, his perspective is critical." Plex stood slowly. The Draxan warrior looked different than he had a few days ago. There was new respect in his bearing, mixed with something that might have been humility. "I designed the test to be difficult but survivable," Plex said. I wanted to see if humans could truly do what they claimed. I expected them to struggle, perhaps succeed through luck or determination. But what I witnessed was something else entirely. He activated displays showing footage from testing ground. Sigma. The council watched again as the humans adapted instantly to an alien environment. As they established camp with practiced efficiency, as they drove off predators twice their size, as they survived a storm that should have killed them. These are not lucky primitives who stumbled onto a harsh world, Plex continued. These are apex survivors. Every action they take serves a purpose. Every skill they possess has been refined over millions of years of selection pressure. They do not simply survive hostile environments. They master them. He looked directly at where Jiwan and his team sat calmly watching. I tested them because I feared them. I still fear them. But I also recognize what they could mean for the galaxy. How many colonies have we lost to harsh conditions? How many species face extinction from environmental disasters? How many times have we abandoned worlds because they were too difficult to tame? Humans can teach us how to survive in those places. They can help us turn marginal worlds into thriving colonies. They can show us techniques for adapting that we never learned because we never needed to learn them. Their knowledge could save millions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Plex sat down and Counselor Illant rose to speak. The ancient scholar looked tired but determined. I have spent the last 3 days studying every record we have of the architect death worlds, she said. The project was meant to create warriors, unstoppable forces that could expand and conquer. 6 of the 12 worlds succeeded in that goal. They produced species that were perfect killers but nothing more. The architects had to destroy their own creations because they could not coexist with other life. She brought up images of those extinct species. They were terrifying to look at. Pure predators with no capacity for anything except hunting and killing. But Deathworld 7 produced something different. Yes, humans are dangerous. Yes, they are survivors. But they are also creators. They make art and music. They tell stories. They build civilizations that value more than just survival. They develop philosophy and ethics and laws. Illant's voice grew stronger. The architects failed 6 times before they understood. Survival alone is not enough. A successful species needs both the strength to overcome challenges and the wisdom to know when to show mercy. Humans have both. She displayed images from human history. Architecture that combined beauty with defensive design. Music that evolved from ancient survival signals into complex art. Literature that explored the nature of existence itself. Humans had taken the raw material of survival instinct and transformed it into culture. They are what the architects hope to create, Illanth concluded. Not just survivors, but civilized survivors. Not just predators, but compassionate predators. They are proof that strength and kindness can coexist. Counselor Arachan spoke next, representing the agricultural guilds. I must address practical concerns. Human biology makes them dangerous to work alongside. They carry microorganisms that could devastate our populations. Their stress response makes them unpredictable in crisis situations. Their survival instincts might override diplomatic considerations. These were valid concerns. Several delegates nodded in agreement, but Arachan was not finished. However, every species brings risks when they join the council. The Draxans are powerful warriors who could crush most of us in combat. The Centauri have telepathic abilities that could invade our minds. The Aquari can survive in environments where we would drown. We manage these differences through protocols and understanding. She looked at the human delegation. Humans have already shown willingness to adapt to our needs. They have shared medical data so we can develop treatments for any biological threats. They have proposed training programs to help us understand their behavior patterns. They are not asking us to accept them blindly. They are offering to work with us to make integration safe and beneficial. Counselor Shara, who had been most vocal about opposing humanity, stood reluctantly. I still have concerns, but I cannot deny what we have witnessed. The humans survived conditions that would kill my people in minutes. They did so without advanced technology, using only knowledge and skill. She hesitated, then continued. My world has colonies on 3 marginal planets. 2 of them struggle constantly with harsh weather and limited resources. We lose people every year to accidents and disasters that we cannot prevent. If humans could teach our colonists even a fraction of their survival skills, those lives could be saved. The testimonials continued for hours. Delegate after delegate stood to share their thoughts. Some expressed continued fear and urged caution. Others spoke enthusiastically about potential benefits. But gradually a consensus began to emerge. Humanity was dangerous, yes, but so was the galaxy itself. And perhaps it took dangerous species to help others survive dangerous places. Finally, High Chancellor Vexamer asked Jiwan to address the council one last time. The young human stood and walked to the center of the chamber. He looked around at the thousands of faces watching him, some fearful, some hopeful, all waiting to hear what he would say. Thank you for testing us, Jiwan began. I know it was meant to prove we were lying or exaggerating, but we needed you to see the truth. Not just read about it in files, but witness it firsthand. Because words alone cannot convey what it means to come from a death world. He spoke simply, without grand gestures or dramatic emphasis. Just honest words from someone who understood exactly what he was. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. Every species that ever lived on our world faced extinction. Most of them failed. They died and left behind only fossils. But some survived. And those survivors became our ancestors. We carry their genes, their adaptations, their will to live. He paused, letting that sink in. We know we are different from you. We know we are harder, tougher, more comfortable with danger. But we also know that these traits are not weaknesses in others. They are simply different strengths. You built civilizations that value peace and cooperation. You created art and science in environments that allowed you to focus on beauty rather than just survival. We admire that. We envy it even. Because humans had to fight for every moment of peace we ever achieved. Every painting was created despite the threat of disaster. Every scientific discovery was made between wars and plagues. You built your civilizations in gardens. We built ours in graveyards. His voice grew stronger. But now we have reached the stars. Now we can offer what we learned in those graveyards. We can teach your colonists how to survive when everything goes wrong. We can help you tame worlds that you thought were too hostile. We can be the ones who run toward disasters while others flee. We are not asking to rule. We are not demanding special privileges. We are offering our services as disaster response specialists, as survival instructors, as environmental engineers who understand how to live in places that want you dead. Jiwan looked directly at Vexamer. Let us join your council. Let us prove that survival and civilization can work together. Let us show the galaxy that being from a death world does not mean being uncivilized. It means understanding what truly matters: life, cooperation, building something worth protecting. He returned to his seat and the chamber fell silent. Every delegate sat with their own thoughts, weighing what they had heard against what they had seen. High Chancellor Vexamer stood for the final time. The council will now vote. The question is simple. Do we accept humanity as full members of the Galactic Council with all rights and responsibilities that entails? And do we approve their proposal to establish the Human Survival Response Corps? The voting began. Each delegate entered their decision into secure terminals. The results would be tallied by the Council's ancient computer systems. Unchanged since the earliest days of galactic civilization, Thalver entered his vote without hesitation. He had voted yes, not because he was unafraid of humanity, but because he understood that fear alone was not a reason to reject someone. The galaxy needed what humans could offer, and humans needed the structure and guidance that the Council could provide. The votes were counted in silence. When the final tally appeared, Vexamer allowed himself a small smile before announcing the results. By unanimous decision, humanity is accepted as the newest member of the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in sound. Some delegates cheered. Others simply looked stunned that it had happened. But the decision was made. Humanity had taken its place among the civilized species of the galaxy. Furthermore, Vexsummer continued, once order was restored, the Human Survival Response Corps is approved. Funding will be provided for training facilities and equipment. Human teams will be available for deployment to any council member facing environmental crises. Ji-Wan bowed respectfully to the council, accepting their decision with quiet dignity. His team stood with him, representing their entire species in this historic moment. 6 months later, the first Human Survival Response Corps teams were operational. They consisted of humans trained in various survival specialties. Supported by technology and resources from across the galaxy, the first deployment was to a failing colony on a harsh ice world. The colonists were dying from equipment failures and inadequate shelter designs. The human team arrived and within weeks had redesigned the colony structures. Using local materials and improved survival techniques, the death rate dropped to 0. More deployments followed. A desert world where water management had failed. A jungle planet where local diseases were overwhelming the medical systems. A volcanic world where geological activity threatened the settlements. In each case, humans assessed the situation and provided solutions that combined ancient survival knowledge with modern technology. They taught colonists from soft worlds how to read weather patterns that could warn them of approaching storms. They showed agricultural specialists how to work with hostile environments rather than trying to reshape them completely. They trained emergency responders in techniques for surviving disasters long enough for rescue to arrive, and gradually, the galaxy's perspective on humanity began to change. Fear remained, but it was joined by respect and gratitude. The survivors from Deathworld 7 were not conquerors or destroyers. They were teachers and protectors. Dangerous when threatened but compassionate toward those who needed help. Falver watched this transformation with satisfaction. He had been right to vote for humanity's admission. The galaxy was better for having them as members, safer, more resilient, better prepared for whatever challenges the future might bring. In his private chambers late one night, he reviewed the footage from testing Ground Sigma one more time, watching the humans build their shelter, drive off predators, survive the storm. It was remarkable to see such perfect adaptation in action, but what struck him most was the moment after the storm passed. When the humans emerged from their shelter and immediately began helping the local ecosystem recover, clearing debris, checking on animal burrows, ensuring the jungle would heal properly. That was the real lesson of Deathworld 7. Humanity had learned not just how to survive, but why survival mattered. They fought to live so they could protect and preserve life around them. They were strong so they could help others become strong. The architects had designed 12 worlds to create warriors. They had succeeded only once, but that single success had produced something better than warriors. It had produced survivors who chose compassion, predators who chose protection, killers who chose to heal. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed. Somewhere in the depths of space, in ruins so ancient that most species had forgotten they existed, an old architect monitoring station registered the completion of its mission. Deathworld 7 had graduated. Its children were thriving among the stars. The station's final message went out, across frequencies that no one had listened to for millions of years. A simple notification that the project was complete, that the experiment had succeeded beyond all expectations, and then the station powered down for the last time, its purpose fulfilled. The architects were long gone, but their greatest creation lived on, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might offer. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never forget the day it discovered Earth's true name.